Hey everybody, welcome in this Adobe Lightroom tutorial brought to you as always by tutvid.com. I don't know why I just did the finger thing, but anyway, today we're going to take a look at kind of 3 different ways to create black and whites, or 3 things that are going to help you maybe create better black and whites. It's not really a technical deep dive into black and whites and tone and all of the stuff that makes up a black and white image, but rather 3 of the ways that I like to work with and or create black and whites here in Adobe Lightroom. Now, if you enjoy this tutorial, of course, make sure you subscribe to my channel. That way you never miss any of these tutorials that come out in the future. I try to do 5 or 6 tutorials a week, something like that. So there's lots of cool stuff for you to check out. If you really enjoy the tutorial, hey, click that link up there. It's a little circle with an I in it. So you can check out and purchase a course all about how to retouch images in Photoshop. We don't have a Lightroom course yet, but I'm working on one. But for now, you can check that out, pick it up. It really helps support the channel, helps us do what we do here at tutvid.com. And without further ado, hey, let's jump in and check out 3 different ways to create black and white images, and 3 ways that I think will help you create better black and white photos. All right, so we've got a landscape photo here, and we're going to convert this to a black and white. Now, of course, I feel like it should go without saying that creating a black and white photo in Lightroom as a raw photo, you're going to have more data and detail and information. Now, for the sake of keeping things mixed up and mushed up and muddled up here, I'm using 3, well, I've got 1 RAW file. This photo here is a RAW photo, but the other 2 are JPEGs. So, you know, maybe the detail won't quite be where I want them to be, but I think it'll be okay for this video. So we're going to talk about creating a black and white with a focus on the HSL sliders. So that's these sliders right here, HSL color and BNW, black and white. So if we open this up and we just choose black and white, it's going to right away convert our image to a black and white photo. And it's actually not a bad black and white. There's some good contrast. But one of the things that I particularly want to focus on here is, well, number 1, we do have an auto button, which, you know, auto buttons are kind of, we have auto, right? That's what we've got here. I tend to like to, I want to be able to tweak the image to what I think, not necessarily what the computer thinks. That's what I'm trying to say. Right up here, we've got this little icon. Now, this icon is sort of this little scrubby tool. You can see it says, look, adjust the black and white mix by dragging this in the photo. So I can click on that to activate it, and I can say, you know what, over here, beneath the trees, right over here, I want that to be a little bit darker. So I'll click and drag downward a little bit. And Lightroom's going to try to go ahead and darken my black and white. Now, you can see it's kind of like highlighting sliders, but it's not doing much of anything. Let's try something a little bit easier for Lightroom, that being the sky. Remember, this was blue, so if we click and drag down, sure enough, we can see our blue slider and even the purple slider here moving just a little bit and darkening. I can click and drag and I can make it even darker. Now, I need to be careful. If I go too dark, we're going to get a very noticeable fringing edge because it's, you know, it's not perfect, and there maybe some of that color is fringing into the edges of the trees. So you don't want to be too drastic. And this, you know, if you're working on a photo, you got maybe some grass and trees that are green, you want to make them brighter, but then a sunset or color in the sky or something you want to make a little darker, right? You can then go in, and it's always a good idea, I think, well, for the most part, a good idea, to go in and really tweak these sliders and kind of make them exactly what you think they should be. Like, we'll just darken that a little bit. Maybe I'll darken some aqua here as well. It's giving us kind of the foremost edge of the clouds. It's going to darken that a little bit, and I can see what purple's doing, if it's doing much of anything. It is. It's darkening up here in the sky. I actually kind of want to take that way down. That looks nice. And then I can look to see if magenta's giving me anything. Not really. And then you can do the same with some of the other colors, but I think red through green, there's not going to be too much in the way of that in this photo. So this is a great base. We can hit the little turn on and off, you know, switch, and we can see there's before, after, and it looks like our tweaking and adjusting, all we've really done is darken the sky, which is great. I mean, that's a good start. Of course, you can then go through, and we could open like tone curve or something, and we can say, let's place a point here and pull down to add a little bit more darkness to our shadows. Right now, the reason I'm not worried about fringing when I'm darkening the sky even more is because this is even darkening the edges of the trees as well. So we're gonna have a much more sort of darkness swath applied to the darker areas of the photo as more of a global adjustment and not simply something targeting the blues. Remember, this photo still has some green and whatnot in the actual tree itself. So we can just darken that a little bit. Maybe not, you know, don't go too crazy. And then I'm going to click up here and I'm going to add a little spike of brightness to the highlights. Not too much. I don't want to go too crazy and lose all detail up there in the highlights. And I'm keeping a keen eye on my histogram, making sure we're not spiking up here in the very whites. And I can see that I still have detail all the way to the very uttermost white parts of this photo. So that's great. I'll collapse well, you can just check out a before and after with the tone curve. You can see it added a lot of contrast. And of course, you can go in, throw some sharpening in here. I'm not going to go over that in this part of the tutorial. We can go into lens correction, and I'm going to choose manual. You might be in profile here. I'm going to go to manual. I'm going to tick on constrain crop, and I'm going to see maybe if I just stretch the edges of the photo a little bit more, almost make it look like even more of a wide angle photo. That could be cool. And then I can add some vignetting. So we can add a darkness vignetting by dragging some vignetting into this and change the midpoint. We can expand or sort of soften the midpoint, which is going to bring darkness a little bit closer to the center of the image, but make the transition a little less noticeable, right? There's before lens correction, there's after. So it's really not lens correction so much as lens transformation or something like that. And there we have kind of a cool black and white photo. And we can simply hit the letter Y, and it's going to give us a quick before and after. So there's our image before. You see not much color in the foreground. We have that little bit of blue in the sky, and there's our black and white after. So kind of a cool little black and white. We can hit the letter D to go back to our loop view mode. And now let's move along to the second tip or conversion technique. And we're going to use this photo. This photo is just a portrait shoot that I did. We were using off-camera flash, but the flash didn't fire. However, when I looked at the photo, I was like, yeah, a little underexposed, but we actually had some great soft light that day. Maybe we can do something in terms of making a cool black and white photo. Now, this type of black and white photo, and a lot of black and white photos that you work on, in fact, there's going to be some work you need to do over here in the basic tab before you actually make the black and white conversion. And I do this for a couple reasons. First of all, sometimes you just are like, man, you know what? I actually kind of like the color photo. I thought maybe there wasn't enough detail in there to get a great color photo, but I like this as a color photo, so I'm going to keep it as a color photo. But also, I don't know, like I'm used to looking at stuff in color. My camera, I'm shooting in color, so I like to just go ahead and make brightness changes and, see if I got some crazy, color cast in a shadow or something. I can see all that stuff when I'm working in color. It's just the way I prefer to work. It doesn't necessarily mean it's right or wrong for that matter, but it's just the way I like to work. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to boost the exposure right off the bat of this photo. We're going to boost it up quite a bit, almost 2 stops maybe. And we can do that because we have a raw file. And by the way, you can see up here in our histogram, right? All the detail of our photo is crunched into the shadows and black parts of the photo. Past almost the, I don't know, a little under halfway into the image, we have virtually nothing. So there's not much in the way of bright tones here. So that's why I'm going to say, look, exposure, we're going to pull you over to about 1.85, 1.95, something like that is good. We can also play with the temperature and tint. I'll probably do that after I make the black and white conversion and see how that changes things for us. I am also going to boost the highlights here, maybe to about plus 30-ish. And I think I will, because her jacket is real deal black. It kind of has a blue color cast here under the light. Maybe I'll just darken that by shifting the blacks back, maybe about negative 23, negative 25, whatever, something like that. And we'll give it a little kiss of clarity. Clarity is kind of like this mid-tone punch, kind of neat, kind of cool. I dig it. Let's close basic. Let's open up tone curve. And I think once more, I'm just going to go ahead and try to darken the shadowy parts of the photo a little bit. And maybe we'll make this more of a retro black and white. So what I'm going to do is click on this black point, and I'm just going to drag it upward just a little bit. I'm just looking to add a little bit of that fade to the shadows, right? If I shut this off, there's before, there's after. You can see how like the very deepest, darkest shadows have kind of like this inkiness to them now. Just a little faded. Looks pretty stinking cool. I'm also going to jump back to the basic tab, and instead of using black and white and hue, saturation, lightness, which you could go ahead and do, I'm just going to choose to convert it to a black and white photo here and take a closer look at it. Maybe I'll change my white balance. You can see as I change white balance, it does change the way that the photo looks. I'm going to pull my temperature back down around 3,000, or so, and I'll try shifting tint as well. And you can see, look, when I push a ton of magenta into it, the photo looks totally different than if I push a bunch of green into it. So I'm going to push some magenta into it, maybe about plus 50, something like that's cool. I think I need to boost the exposure a little bit more, so I'm going to push the exposure up a tiny bit. And I think what we're missing, it is actually a nice low contrast, very retro looking black and white. We could tweak and add a little contrast if you're just like, I need some kind of contrast. You could throw a little contrast in there. You could also introduce contrast by boosting the whites here in tone curve, but I don't really like that, so I'm just going to, drag away here. You just click on the point to get rid of it. And, I right-clicked on the point, I'm sorry, and then just choose delete that control point. Sometimes I get confused with Photoshop where you just click and whip it right away. And then we could go down to effects. We could apply a little dehaze, but again, that's going to give you a little bit more contrast. I don't know that I want necessarily too much contrast. I'm going to double-click on that slider to make that go away. I think one element of this that would be really cool is if we add something that looks like some of that old film grain. So let's go ahead and add a lot of grain. So I'm going like 77. In fact, I'm going to come up here and choose 1:1 to view this at a true 1:1 ratio. And I can see I've got a ton of grain in there, probably too much. Let's increase the size here. Yeah, something like, yeah, it's a 55. Let's just go with 55. It landed on 55. That looks good. Something between 50 and 60, I was going to say. And hey, 55 is right there in the middle, right? And then roughness. So if you go really rough, you're going to get kind of this almost looks like television static, which is pretty cool, right? It almost is like those old, 60s, 70s kind of hostage standoff type photos that you always saw on those old television cameras. Or if you reduce roundness, roughness way down, you really get something that looks like a combination of like a bad digital effect and a photorealistic painting, sort of like an oil on canvas effect, which can be cool in its own right. We're, however, going to go, I think, favor a little bit closer to that old television static type of grain, and I think I need to reduce the overall amount. So let's pull this down to like, I don't know, 30, 40, something like that. And let's go back to the fit view to check this out overall. Yeah, that looks pretty good. If we shut that off, there it is as a nice smooth image. Maybe I'll zoom back in so we can see this. There it is as a nice smooth image, and if I turn the grain back on, there it is with grain. Again, we're doing this because we are intentionally creating sort of this old school style, think a candid photo of Jackie Kennedy or something. And that's what we're going for here in this photo. And I think it looks pretty good. To check out a before and after of this one, because it's going to revert to an old raw conversion that I had, I'm just going to right click on this and choose to create a virtual copy. And I'm going to right click on the virtual copy and go develop settings, reset. And that's going to take me back to the way the image was right out of camera. So there's the image we began with. There's the black and white we created. Pretty cool. I like it a lot. So the third technique, or the third method of creating a black and white photo that I think is interesting, maybe something you should consider, is creating an HDR or shooting an HDR image and converting that to black and white. Now, you may look at this image and say, well, it's just a sin to convert an image with those beautiful colors in the sky to a black and white photo. And I would probably agree with you, but let's just talk about the principle here. With an HDR image, obviously, it's a high dynamic range image, so we have all kinds of crazy detail and all kinds of awesomeness. Now, with a photo like this, oftentimes I find that all I need to do is convert it to a black and white photo. So I'm going to jump back into here. I'm going to go back to my loop view mode here. And what we can do is just go up to basic and just choose black and white. And you can see we've got this insane looking black and white. At this point, of course, you could boost the clarity a little. You want to be careful. A lot of people tend to go really overboard with the clarity slider. It strikes me as a little amateurish. If you're doing it, I'm not trying to rip on you or anything, but I don't know. It's just not really a look that I think is all that great. I like to just kick a little bit of clarity in there when it's needed. And of course, you can boost the contrast. Contrast adjustments you can also do here in the tone curve. We're keeping it simple though in the basic tab, because why not? And of course, you can still come up here and work with the temperature and tint slider and see what you get. Now you can see this image reacts a lot differently than the portrait that we were just working with a moment ago, but we still get some interesting things. And beyond all of this, we can also look at using some of the other tools here in Lightroom, like the adjustment brush and like the graduated filter tool. So the graduated filter, we could do something like, I'm just going to hold down my Alt-Option key and reset all the parameters. We could boost the exposure here and say, we want to introduce more lightness up here into the sky, and draw a second graduated filter down here and say, no, we don't want to boost the brightness. We actually want to darken down here. And not only would this not need to be darkened as I'm looking at it, we probably should make the blacks a little bit blacker and increase contrast a little bit to really just make the foreground appear a little sharper, crisper, and overall darker. Maybe we need to make it even darker, right? Something like that. So we really have this very dark foreground leading up to a sky that is a bit brighter. We could select by clicking on the little pin there. We could select the sky and edit that and say maybe we want to dehaze the sky a little bit or add a little bit of clarity, something like that. Maybe kick a little touch of sharpness into there, whatever we want. You can go through and very quickly, we can just real quick look at it before and after. We almost change the overall lighting scheme of the photo. It's pretty cool. And the adjustment brush works very much in the same way, except that you're just brushing the settings on. Maybe we want to make these buildings, super sharp and add tons of clarity just to them. Well, you can do that with the adjustment brush. And basically what I'm trying to say here is just don't forget to take your photo to the next level and do stuff like, consider adding grain, look at split toning, the lens corrections, adding vignetting, of course, sharpening, all kinds of things like that to make just the perfect black and white photo in Lightroom. There's something so amazing about a beautiful, simple, just right black and white photo, whether it's a portrait or landscape or anything in between. There's something that's so cool about it. So for creating, and basically what I'm trying to say here is just don't forget about taking your image to the next level with some of the tools here in Lightroom, like the adjustment brush and the graduated filter tool, and even stuff like adding grain, split toning, sharpening, noise reduction. Sometimes you got some crazy noise down there in the shadows. Don't sleep on that. And even stuff, of course, like lens correction and vignetting and so on and so forth. Guys, we just created some super cool black and whites in Lightroom, and there's something that's just so amazing about just that perfect, simple black and white, whether it's a portrait or a landscape or anything in between. You just have got to love a well-executed black and white photo. And with split toning, by the way, you're just a hair breadth away from making it a sepia image as well, if that's your thing. So yeah, we've gone ahead and created some black and white photos in Lightroom. If you've enjoyed this video, again, make sure you subscribe to my channel so you never miss any more of these videos in the future. And for creating 3 different types of black and white photos in Lightroom and 3 different ways that are going to make your black and white creations and conversions just that much better, guys, that's it. Get it? Got it? Good. Nathaniel Dodson, touchvid.com. I'll catch you in the next one.